New World is a completely different game than you remember. If you were like me, you were excited for New World's launch back in 2021. A brand new IP, a brand new studio, and a brand new world to step into and play with your friends. New World had a massive launch, nearly 1 million concurrent players on Steam, leading to massive queues and very populated worlds. Unfortunately though, New World's launch was plagued with issues, which had their near million concurrent player base fall off pretty quickly. Server issues, game-breaking bugs, economy issues that would have them shut down the entire trading post, insanely long and boring progression, and a lack of endgame content. New World felt like a game that didn't know what it wanted to be, which makes sense. This game started out as a sandbox survival MMO, and after several iterations become the more theme park game that we know today. All of these issues together though led to the mass exodus of all of those players. It has been almost 3 years since I last logged in, and I never even made it to level 60 on my first character. But with the Nighthaven update coming in Season 10, and the desire to just play an MMO in general, I decided to jump in again to the world of Aeternum, and I really wasn't expecting what I found. I began my journey on my OG character. I logged in, and I instantly became overwhelmed. I had no idea where I was or what I was doing, so I said screw it and I logged out. Then I made a new character and decided it was best to start from scratch, and I am so glad that I did that. Once you make it past the still horrendous character creator, you find yourself in a familiar world with a fresh coat of paint. The starting experience has been completely revamped. While the tutorial still seems familiar as a player, once you get beyond that and start adventuring, you will be shocked by how much this game has changed if it's been a few years for you. So me, just wanting to hit level 65, I rushed through those starting quests and I headed into the first settlement, which I don't think looked like this in the past. It's definitely had a facelift. So I picked up all the quests in the area, cut down some trees for those quests, did the usual stuff, but eventually realized that beyond the starting area, there was an entire Golden Path quest line to follow, with a story to go along with it. I'm not sure what the beginning of that story is because I skipped every single cutscene just to rush through it, but it is there. This alone is huge. If you remember, New World's leveling previously was kind of a mess. It took forever to get there wasn't really one long connected story, there was quests scattered in each zone, making you bounce all over the map, in a world that had no mount and very minimal fast travel at launch. Now we have a story that takes you from zone to zone, taking on different quests, fighting various bosses, all of which can be done solo to get you to endgame. Meh. Questing in general has had a significant revamp as well. Old New World questing, if I remember correctly, was mostly just kill X mob, loot X chest. That was it. Every single quest felt the exact same. Now, while you do still find your kill quests and your looting chest quests, there are others sprinkled in between. You have more interactables, doing things like kicking crates into the ocean and blowing up rowboats. There are world events that pop up, like this one where I ran into a ship that rolls up onto a shore, having you kill the crew, get some loot, and then sink their ship. It's a pretty cool step in the right direction. This isn't something outlandish for MMOs in general, but compared to what New World was in the past, it is a massive improvement. There are also various puzzles through the questing that has you dodging lasers or needing to solve room puzzles to progress, but the best part is, if you just did the main story with 0 side quests, it will take you all the way from level 1 to 65.
But not sure that sweaty minotaur. Hoping you
which is pretty much what I did once I realized that there was in fact this golden path to take. This took probably 30-35 hours to do so for me, which is much faster than it was previously. Each climactic point in the story takes you into what are called soul trials, which are basically small boss challenges that pull you into an instance to take on a boss. They weren't overly challenging, but they were harder than your regular NPC fights out in the world, and when you hit level 65, soul trials don't actually go away, they continue as repeatable content for more loot. At level 20, you unlock the quest to get a mount. That is, if you aren't like me and actually have the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion, or purchased both in the New World Aeternum bundle. I personally waited until level 55 when I could just feel the aches of my character's legs transmitting through my computer into my own. That had nothing to do with starting to go to the gym, it was definitely my character, but at this point I finally purchased that expansion. The mounts themselves are pretty basic, but riding is its own trade skill that you can level up like various other professions, and you do this by completing races and events through the world. As you progress in this trade skill, you unlock various attachments for your mount that can be equipped in your mount's inventory screen, doing things such as increasing the sprint duration or stamina regen time, giving you yet another goal to achieve as you level. Once you hit level 55 though, leveling slows down pretty significantly, which isn't a bad thing. There is still plenty of content to get you to the end. I was level 61 when I finished the main story, and this is without touching Brimstone Sands or the Angry Earth expansion. Once that main story was done, I did head into the desert, and if I recall, Brimstone Sand was the first major content update that New World had, bringing in this whole desert area. And this zone, personally, I think is very well done for a desert. I normally don't enjoy desert biomes in games, but this one has enough going on and felt unique enough to keep it interesting, especially with the chest runs that just vomit legendary gear at you. It really gave me that loot dopamine hit. The story here picks up where it left off, as it should, having you fight your way through the desert on various quests, exploring ruins, and getting that loot, eventually leading you straight into the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion. Again, just sticking with the main quest line, Brimstone Sands brought me from 61 to 64, leaving just one level for Rise of the Angry Earth to knock off. I'd say that's pretty good, because Rise of the Angry Earth is originally what raised the level cap to 65, so it was expected to be 60 when you started this expansion 2 years ago when it came out. The Elysian Wilds, or whatever it's called, that came with the Angry Earth expansion is by far my favorite biome. It feels vaguely familiar while brand new at the same time, which it should. This was originally a zone called First Light, which was one of the starting zones at New World's launch. Since then, it has been transformed into this overgrown lush forest with fluorescent plants and creatures all throughout it, and the once familiar area has been completely destroyed and overgrown as you take on the new threat that has caused this. And this is where I reached my final level. I still finished the story though, and I'd highly recommend you do too, as I imagine Nighthaven will pick up right where this one leaves off, similar to how Brimstone and Angry Earth did. This was all in about 30-35 hours of gameplay, straight questing. I did very little crafting and gathering, which in itself would probably be another 30 hours to level those trade skills, not to mention all of the changes that have been brought to New World in the last few years that I have yet to take on. For someone like me, the end game content is not lacking. You have your seasonal progression path to take on, various PvP activities such as Outpost Rush, which is large scale battles. That game mode has gotten some love in the last few years, actually turning into something that you can queue up for, adding additional maps with another one coming in the Nighthaven expansion. There's also a Capture the Flag game mode now, there's 3v3 arenas and wars, all which will help you progress on your PvP track. Open world PvP is pretty non-existent. In my travels, I saw maybe 10 people total flagged up in the world on the entirety of my 1 to 65 journey. The instance PvP stuff that we have is fun. It's just not the best PvP experience I've ever played, but it's still entertaining enough for me to sit in the queues and take part in, and I will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. For PvE, you have mutated expeditions, which are challenging mutated versions of the various dungeons out in the world. There are raids, there are what are called soul trials, which we talked about, which are repeatable solo boss fights. There are season trials and elite trials, which are repeatable small and large group content, on top of the corrupted portals that you could take on out in the open world if you wanted something else to do. There is a ton of stuff for a player like me to engage in, who is just coming back after all this time, and probably hundreds of hours of additional content if I dive into everything. For those of you who have been back and keep checking it out though, you might not feel the same way. It seems that a lot of longtime New World fans feel that endgame content is lacking. A lot of this is due to the fact that Amazon Game Studios isn't exactly fast at getting out new content. Each season seems to bring a couple smaller features and changes along with a new season pass, while they save the big stuff for yearly content drops, which always seems to be in October. A year is a very long time for people to wait wanting to do more stuff, and hopefully if a lot of players come back to New World with Season 10, maybe Amazon will pick up the pace on this a little bit. But AGS is also working on a second MMO in the Lord of the Rings universe, so it's not like their entire attention is set on New World still. On the bright side though, Season 10 and the Nighthaven update does seem like it's having a primary focus on endgame content. Up until this year, every major yearly update seemed to have a focus on both endgame and fixing some of the introductory zones and starting experience and adding more to that, which was desperately needed, but it did take away from those who powered through that to get to the end game and weren't being delivered on the content experience that they were hoping for. But Nighthaven appears to be for those players who are at that end game point looking for something new. The level cap will be bumped from 65 to 70 as we gain access to the new region of Nighthaven, with a continuation to the story that was left off in the Rise of the Angry Earth about 2 years ago. We are also getting what are called catacombs, which is a game mode for up to 3 players to explore procedurally generated dungeons, battling a variety of enemies, gaining unique power-ups for this mode, along with being able to collect cursed resources and currency, which will need to be extracted and cleansed before a timer runs out. There's an entire new 10-man raid called the Isle of Night, overhauled endgame progression, which includes changes to systems such as gearing, progression, and rewards, a new gear modding system, set bonuses, attribute changes, perk design updates, and much more, on top of the brand new outpost rush map called the Tower, which you can actually check out in the preview right now. Amazon Game Studios has put a lot of love into this game since launch, which will surprise a lot of people as a large majority of the community seem to write it off after the bad launch they experienced. It's not the perfect MMO, but it is very enjoyable in its current state. What I experienced in the last 50 or so hours of playing this in the past couple weeks is how New World probably should have been at launch. If they launched with everything New World has to offer today, people would look at this game in a completely different light, which is why I'm even bothering making this video. So if you have been looking for an MMO to play and haven't revisited or even visited New World at all, then give it a shot and you may be pleasantly surprised, because I do know that this game sits in a good amount of your Steam libraries.